Good morning. It is currently 3:50, 10 to 4 in the morning, and I can't sleep. So I thought I would do what I always do when I can't sleep, which is run the camera, pick a topic, see what comes out. And also, I already had all the lighting and the camera in position because I'm doing a client shoot, so I figured I'd make use of it. Look how atmospheric I can make it. Watch this. Brothers, sisters, comrades and friends, welcome to Bat Country. Did that work? Okay. So, before my really serious binge drinking, which was the kind of final stage of my alcoholism, as it is for lots of people, I went through a number of other phases. There was kind of youthful dalliance, like when I was between 14 and 18, when I was kind of finding my feet with alcohol. And back then it was already a problem. I was already getting kicked out of pubs and getting myself in trouble with the police and stuff before I was even of legal age to drink in the UK. But that quickly progressed into social alcoholism. By the time I was a student in the city of Brighton, it was already a major problem. And there was a point at which me and my housemates, who were all just kind of thrown together for convenience, we didn't choose to be there. I won my room in a coin toss against a very wealthy Portuguese guy. And I lived with a Catholic guy from Birmingham and a Welsh nurse who gave us all lice, and the house was terrible and stuff. And one day we had this big conflagration. We just had this pointless drunken argument, and none of us spoke to each other again for like 3 months. And we all were just in our rooms. And I have no idea what they were doing, but I was drinking. £1.50 for 3 litres of cider, just necking them in my room alone. And then I went off to France, where I was fired from my job there because of alcohol. And when I returned to the UK, it didn't stop. I'd been living at altitude for a while, and I remember I came back very fit, able to run long distances, even though I was smoking and an alcoholic already by that time, when I was 22. And then I got really fit, and I had 2 years or so of what I used to call teetotalism. I was teetotal between 23 and 25. And for years now, what is that, 15 years, I've been telling people that period was because I was taking my health and my fitness very seriously, training to be a martial arts instructor and stuff. But the truth of it is, I think that I'd recognized it was a problem even then, at 23. And that period of abstinence was me already trying to get sober and failing. So I survived 2 years back then. And then after that, I became a grey zone drinker to begin with for a few years. And grey zone drinking is like when you are drinking heavily, but you don't feel it climbing on top of you. Grey zone drinking is a term that some of us use to describe what I think is the majority of problem drinkers. So grey zone drinking is when it's like sofa drinking, or it's like social drinking. But it's drinking more than everybody else and more than you should, to the point where you're already starting to worry if it's a problem. And in my opinion, that represents the vast majority of drinkers. Very few people make it to end-stage alcoholism like I did. Like, very few of us are drinking 1.5 litres of vodka in the bed for weeks on end. Most people are stuck in that grey zone. Maybe that's you, maybe not. But for me, that was characterized, I was in a relationship at the time, and that was characterized by making sure that every event, everything that we did revolved around alcohol in one way or another. Whether that was a night on the sofa watching Twilight, Have you ever watched the Twilight movies with Robert Pattinson's commentary on? The guy's fucking hilarious. He's so funny. The way that he laughs at his acting in it is really fun. So I recommend. If you like this channel, if you think it's okay, do like and subscribe. Or if you really like it and you would like to be more actively involved, head over to the Patreon. There's a link in the description. Anyway, or perhaps we'd be going on a day out or something like that. But everything was an excuse to get drunk together. And that relationship was built on that. That's grey zone drinking. After that period, alcoholism is progressive. Always. And for people who are going to become alcoholics, it follows a very clear pattern. You can only see the pattern in hindsight, unfortunately. So if you are a person who's stuck in the grey zone at the moment, there's a good chance you don't even know. But for those of us for whom it progresses to full-blown alcoholism, and if you'll forgive the unscientific language, there are certain stages you go through. The next one for me was what is commonly called functioning alcoholism, or high-functioning alcoholism, or functional alcoholism. And I dislike that term, as I've said in the past. I did a whole video about why we should stop saying it. But it does have some utility. And that's the period that I'm going to talk about today. What a day in the life of a functioning alcoholic looked like for me before it progressed into end-stage suicidal oblivion drinking. Okay, so I gave you a recap forwards chronologically of the stages of my alcoholism. Let me go back from today, back to this point as well. So I've got about 2 years sober. And then before that, I had 18 months of extremely bad binge relapses, the worst of all of it, worst of my entire 20 years of drinking, of alcoholism. The worst of the 20 years of alcoholism happened in that 18 months. Before that, I had another 2 years of sobriety. And before that was about 5 years of really hard, not end-stage alcoholism, but proper, job, relationship losing, getting in trouble with the law, and attempting to, what's that? How do we euphemize that on YouTube now? Delete myself? Is that it? Ugh, gross. But that period, so I've essentially been like an end-stage alcoholic or been struggling with sobriety for about 10 years. And this period that I'm going to describe, this day in the life of a functioning alcoholic, this happened, I was 32. So that's 8.5 years ago. Let's get into it. Okay, so at 32, I was living in Shanghai, where I was the global brand manager for a luxury sex toy company. We made solid gold vibrators. That was our thing. And that's what the brand was famous for. It was a $15,000 vibrator. But we made all sorts of weird stuff. It's hard to explain this, but we made a tuxedo for your penis. And we just put gold on everything. It was a wild time. But it was at that time, it was a very respectable brand in my industry. And I was very lucky to have that job. It was the best job in the industry while I had it, by far. Everybody wanted that job. And Shanghai was an incredible place. And I'm happy to say that I regret very little of my time there, except towards the end, despite the fact that alcohol characterized my arrival into China and also my departure from it. And what I mean is I arrived drunk. I got the Trans-Siberian train the whole way from London to Shanghai. Arrived 6 minutes early. It puts the UK rail network to shame. But that whole trip I was hammered. And I got chased down the street by a hostel owner in Moscow because I'd stolen one of their pillows. A literal pillow fight in the center of Moscow. But yeah, I was hammered that whole time. Arrived drunk and then never really stopped. But the thing about it is, like, I was in good shape. I was fit. I had a good job. I had a stable relationship for a while. So outwardly, nothing looked out of control. My social life was quite good. I had a really good network of friends and was attending events and getting invited to stuff like in the paddock at the Formula One and to this like invitation-only burlesque show in an abandoned theatre, a Halloween party in an abandoned shopping mall. That was pretty amazing. The police showed up and shut it down. That was scary. And for all of it, hammered, drunk every day. But what did a natural day look like? That's what I'm trying to get to. So, in this period, I'd already been living in Shanghai for 4 years, 3 or 4 years. And I arrived and just slipped into a groove with that place, in a way that I haven't ever done anywhere else. I just kind of fit right in. Even though I didn't really speak Chinese, I still don't. And I was an anomaly. I chose to live in a very Chinese area rather than kind of an expat enclave. And I really stuck out there. I was the only Westerner in my compound. Like a compound there is quite large, thousands of people. And I was the only Westerner. But I just loved it there. There was a sense of anonymity about Shanghai, which I've always craved. It's the same reason why I'm attracted to like bombed out or abandoned places. I'm also attracted to just like the anonymity of a really big city. And it doesn't get any better for that than Shanghai. By the time like 3 or 4 years had passed, my metabolism had begun to change. Like, after 32, there is a physical change which makes you less able to accommodate alcohol in the way you did when you were 22. You can't just stuff as much of it in your body and then bounce up in the morning with a smile on your face anymore. Something changes. Your metabolism changes, and I also believe that in tandem with that, your psychology changes a bit. And I was going through that, and I was feeling restless and unsatisfied. And my relationship with my girlfriend had become strained. I didn't really have any tools to deal with an emotion. It sounds so naive to say, but it's true. Like, I don't want to claim victimhood as a man here, but young men are crap at this stuff. Really, really bad at understanding and processing negative emotion. Up until this point, I'd been concealing negative emotions through like exercise and fighting and alcohol and sex and all of that stuff. And then suddenly at 32, I matured overnight. I became a man rather than a teenager, and didn't know how to cope with it all. Was suddenly worried about responsibilities and future. And the drinking really increased, and I became distant from my girlfriend. And I'll talk about that in detail in a moment, I think. So the alarm would ring at 6:30, and I would jump out of bed, and I would be sleeping in shorts and t-shirt, like outdoors shorts, or like gym pants. Because in the morning, the first thing I do is I make a coffee, I drink it, pee, brush teeth, that kind of thing, and then I go to the gym at 6:30. Like 6:45, I'm out the door. The gym was on the way to work, and I did it every day, almost without fail, except towards the end. So I would leave my apartment. I didn't even say goodbye to my girlfriend anymore at this point. Girls are cats, they just sleep. And they get grumpy if you wake them up, so I didn't bother. We were just in a rut together. I just walked out the door, grabbed my bag and stuff, with my office clothes. And I would walk down the stairs and through my compound saying good morning to all the familiar faces setting up their shops for the day. And on the corner, you cross an intersection, and on the corner there was a 24-hour convenience store. And I would go in at 6:45, 6:50 every morning and buy a half-litre or 35 centiliter bottle of vodka. Whatever they had, whatever was cheapest. And it didn't matter, the volume, it didn't matter to me. It was just what I could communicate that I wanted, because my Chinese was so bad. And I would take whatever I was offered. And then I would put that in my bag and then walk to the gym. The gym was halfway to the office. If you want to know the geography by the way, the compound I lived in was Tianyao-Qiaolu, and it's near Shanghai Stadium. And my office was on Wanpinglu, and my gym was on Xietulu. I would arrive at the gym, I would go into the changing rooms to put my bag in a locker, but that's when I would have my first drink. There was never anyone else in there, really. And I would open the bottle of vodka, take a big slug, close it, put it in the locker, and then I would go and really work hard in the gym. And they had a good free weight section and a good heavy bag. So I would go and start, and I would do a 25-minute beat the fuck out of the bag, then go and do just simple deadlifts and bench presses, that kind of thing. Then back to the changing rooms, more vodka and a shower, and then to the office. And that was a good system for me, having a shower immediately before work. Alcoholics tend to drink vodka because they think it doesn't smell. You can't smell it on your breath. But you can. You can smell day-old vodka. You might not be able to smell someone who's drinking it on the sly, but if they've been drinking it for days on the sly, you can smell it. It smells like garlicky metal, in my opinion. And I would arrive at work. Towards the end of this period, I would be buying another bottle of vodka at this point. But for now, we'll just stick with the one. And I would get in the elevator, go up to the 31st floor, whatever it was, and go to my desk, go to the toilets immediately on arrival, drink a little bit more vodka, and then back to my desk. And that would be the routine. So every time I would go to the bathroom, I would be drinking a little bit more vodka, just very small at this point, just tiny nips, just to kind of see me through the day. And for a while I was sustaining that, and I was able to do the big important meetings and budgets and decisions and all of that stuff, and meetings with the boss, and come up with creative ideas. It kind of was working for a little while. I would get through the day. Lunchtime I always took alone, and I would drink a little bit more vodka at the start and at the end of my lunch break. There was a big Western shop there, I forget the name, but I would go there. They sold these incredible sandwiches. This is boring, I don't know why I'm telling you this, but I'd buy a big boring sandwich and a bottle of hot sauce, and I would cover this sandwich in hot sauce and eat it until I was sweating. And that hot sauce was kind of a disguise strategy as well, because it was very strong and it made me sweat and flush because it was so hot. And then I looked a little bit less drunk as a result. People just assumed that I was famous for it. I had a reputation for it. Every Christmas, all of my colleagues would buy me hot sauce or beard oil and that kind of thing. That was my identity. Hot sauce. Then we'd make it through the afternoon with still working pretty hard. And then things would change. So I got off work at 5:30, and it would either go two ways, right? One is I had an event or I was with friends. I'll talk about that in a moment, but for the moment, let's assume that I had no plans for the evening, because this is slightly more insightful into what it's like to be an unhappy, functioning alcoholic. At 5:30, roughly, if there was nothing else on in the evening, I would wait until all of my colleagues had left the office. I would try to be one of the last people to leave, because I knew that my first stop was in the Family Mart, it's like a Chinese 7-Eleven kind of thing, right next to my office. Because there I would go and buy, it was the evening, so I didn't have to worry about smelling of vodka. In general, I would go there and I would buy 1 or 2 330 centiliter bottles of Johnny Walker Red Label. One of them would go in my bag and one of them would go in my inside pocket if I was wearing a jacket. And then I would walk the long way home in the dark, in the evening. There's a lot of reasons why I did that. One is that in this time that I'm describing, I had fallen out of love with we had fallen out of love with each other, with my girlfriend. And part of me can rationalize that by saying that she moved to China because I had an offer. She came with me. And she never integrated as well as I did. She never enjoyed it the same way that I did. And that speaks to the different experiences men and women have when they travel to China. So that's, for a long time, what I would tell people. When they asked why we split, I would say, well, we had a different relationship with China. I loved it, she didn't. Eventually, China broke us up. But looking back, really, I was falling in love with alcohol to the cost of that relationship. She'd done nothing wrong. We never cheated on each other or never really even argued until the day we broke up. It just fell apart. And I think it's because I wanted the life of a single person with no responsibilities. I wanted no consequences. I wanted the alcohol more than I wanted that relationship. Eventually I would want the alcohol more than I wanted anything, to the point where it nearly killed me. I wasn't quite there yet, but for a long time, I convinced myself that circumstances had broken that relationship down, when in fact, I think that I did it in order to preserve my relationship with alcohol. And as a result of that, I was never in a rush to go home. I wanted to kind of linger outdoors, away from the apartment, because the apartment was the end. It was the end of the drinking. It was like it prevented me from having my relationship with alcohol. If I went home, I couldn't drink because she wasn't drinking like I did anymore. We were drinking buddies for a long time, but my drinking got worse and hers didn't. And I couldn't just drink neat whiskey from the bottle in front of her. So I did it on the street instead. And my route home, of all the things that when people ask me what I miss about alcohol, this walk home is really representative of what I loved about alcohol for a while. So that walk, I can't pretend I don't remember it fondly. I do remember it fondly. And so that route from my office back to my apartment, it was really gorgeous. It took in a big loop down Zhaojia Banglu, past a place called Metro City, which was this kind of up-and-coming shopping area. And then through a place called Shujiahui Park, which was also gorgeous, this kind of manicured garden in the middle of the city. And then hopping over this really busy intersection along a line of bars, and then around the inside of Shanghai Stadium, not along the field, but Shanghai Stadium was like a huge complex with like shops and restaurants and stuff. The best fish and chips I've ever had outside England was there, in a place called, the restaurant was called the British Isles. Fantastic place. And that walk home was not just the highlight of my day, it was the highlight of my experience in China. Because I was able to walk among the crowds as an outsider, just getting drunker and drunker and drunker all the way until I made it home. And it was just gorgeous, absolutely beautiful part of the city. And by the time I got home, I would be drunk and kind of like melancholy as well. There's just no fun for my poor girlfriend to be around, because at this stage the relationship had already declined and we didn't have much to say to each other. We were kind of just bitter about each other and just stuck in the same room. We went to bed at different times. And that would be our evening. We would sit down. It wasn't a big apartment. It was a table about this size. And we would both have our laptops open, facing each other, but not talking, both like on YouTube or whatever, just not doing anything. Or I'd be playing a computer game on my laptop right in front of her. It was awkward and horrible. And the whole time, I was wondering if she would notice if I made an excuse to go out and get another bottle of whiskey and come back a little bit more drunk. I didn't do it. What I would do was eventually she'd be so fed up with the silence that she would go to bed at like 9 p.m. and then I would drink more. And then somehow get up at 6:30 and go to the gym and start all over again. And that was my life for about a year, until one Sunday, in a moment of heartfelt sincerity, we both just kind of acknowledged the relationship was over. And we had a cat together, like a rescue cat, that we bribed off the street with a slice of pizza one night. And we arranged for the cat to be sent back to England, and she left. We sent the cat back for a better life. But there were other days as well where I would never make it home. Where instead of that long walk home, I would go straight to a Western pub with some of my friends or colleagues. And we would just get absolutely trashed on like a Tuesday night for no reason at all. A few of us would go and just get fucked up. Or if there was like an event that me and my girlfriend had to go to, like some kind of, like a product launch. I remember once we went to a launch or, Vans brand, the shoes and stuff. We went to a Vans launch. I think it was Off the Wall. And there was a place in Shanghai called The Mansion, which was a very shady place. No one knew exactly who owned it, but it was just a big mansion in the suburbs of Shanghai that had been converted into this kind of party space. And to get in, you had to climb under a wall off a motorway. Like you had to get your taxi to pull over on the hard shoulder of the motorway and then climb under a fence into the garden to keep the whole thing kind of secret. And those were messy nights. You don't get home until 4 o'clock in the morning, and there are drugs and alcohol and like fights, and the locals hated us. Gross. But any excuse to get out of my mind, right? Even though I should have been happy. I don't know. I feel like there's some of us, not just in alcohol, but in general, who it doesn't matter what the circumstances are. We will find ways to be unhappy. We will find ways to sabotage ourselves. I'm very much one of those people. Even here, even in sobriety, this place I should be incredibly happy here, but I keep having bouts of serious depression and doing strange things and not having the motivation I need to do work and all of this stuff. Those were messy times. And then after that relationship ended, I got what I wanted, which is another way of saying you have to be careful what you wish for, because all of the bad habits that relationship was protecting me from, they all came all at once, and I started being very reckless. And this whole time, there were times when after that mansion party, the van's launch party, I didn't go back to the apartment. I just got in a taxi and straight to work, hammered, out of my mind, drunk, still wearing booze-soaked clothes. But one of the characteristics of a functioning alcoholic is that you develop a kind of personality where people are afraid to confront you. You know, they think you're creative, or they think you're reflective, but really you're just spiky and hungover. I was able to get away with it because I had created that role for myself to be like how you imagine architects with their rolled up turtlenecks and they're all very and artistic and smoke expensive cigarettes and that kind of thing. I made that for myself, not because that's who I was, but because that's what kept people at arm's length, made me seem aloof rather than an alcoholic. I cultivated that kind of personality to protect my drinking. And it was working. For ages, it was working. It got so much worse after that relationship ended. Eventually, it all fell apart, as it almost always does. But for a while, I was limiting my drinking, my observable drinking, to socially acceptable times. So people didn't know that I was drunk when I turned up in the morning. They didn't know that I was drinking at lunch, because I had all these bizarre strategies, like the hot sauce, to hide it. Or like an active social life helped me hide it. Or being spiky and creative helped me hide it. Being in a position of responsibility helped me hide it. You know. But the whole time, alcohol was helping me transition from every moment of my day. So it helped me wake up in the morning. It helped me go from waking up to being active in the gym. Then it helped me go from the gym to work. Then it helped me get through the day. Then it helped me brace myself for getting home. Then it helped me go to sleep. The alcohol, for a functioning alcoholic like I was, it's constantly a crutch. You constantly lean on it to help you move from one state to another. It's like a lubricant. They call it a social lubricant. For alcoholics of my type, it's much more than that. It helps you glide through life. For a while. It doesn't last. It only gets worse. And this kind of persona I'd cultivated for myself, this kind of big drinking artist, creative type, it was absolute bullshit. But it really helped me cover up, for example, withdrawal symptoms, which I would get from time to time, of just very mild, like shaking and being incredibly irritable and unapproachable, and losing my temper sometimes in the office. The persona that I'd created helped me disguise a lot of my shitty behavior. And burnout, what was called, I had to take this is later, but I had to take a sabbatical from work for 6 weeks because of my alcoholism. But everybody at work called it burnout. And it wasn't burnout. I should talk about that one day. And I would tell myself all the lies that I now hear, because you don't spot these things at the time. You only notice them in retrospect. But I was saying all the same lies that every other functioning alcoholic told. I would point out that I never missed a day's work, when that's not even really true, because if you're turning up drunk to work, you miss that day. You might be there physically, but you're not there, you know. And I might tell myself that I'd never been arrested in that period. I hadn't been arrested, so everything must be okay, or that I was holding down my job and performing well, so I can't have a drinking problem. My relationship hadn't yet broken down, therefore I can't be an alcoholic. And all of it was just lying. These are all lies that I was telling myself and to everybody else. And because nobody else wanted to face the problem of my alcoholism, or maybe even their own, no one ever challenged me on those lies. So when I would come in after, I once had a fight with it. This happened a couple of times. So I had a fight with my colleague, like a punch up. And I actually hurt him pretty badly. And the next day, instead of anyone saying, "Hey, Stu, I think maybe you should back off the alcohol," I had a couple of people privately come and tell me that they thought he deserved it, which is pretty shitty. And they would say that, look, he was being a dick that night, but no one deserved what I did to him. And when all the people who were telling me that were also big drinkers in China. And I think that they were using me to excuse their own shitty behavior a little bit as well. You know? Birds of a feather flock together. So that thing I said about the relationship and it ending very slowly is really common. And what it is like a lot of us are drinking like that because we're bad at regulating our emotions. We are becoming emotionally distant. When I broke up with her, or when we broke up, it was mutual. I told her that I no longer wanted to be in a relationship and that I wanted to enjoy what life had to offer, like parties and just irresponsibility. But really that was a cover, because the emotional distance, the relationship didn't cause the emotional distance. I did. I was pushing her away in order, like pretending that what I wanted was independence. Right? I wanted to be independent. But really what I wanted was to be alone with my bottle and fuck everyone else. That's where it ended up in the end, very much alone with the bottle. And that's how alcoholism creeps on top of you. It separates you from all of the people that you love, convinces you that you love it and only it, and then you die. And that's what a day roughly looked like when I was still a fresh, young, functioning alcoholic, rather than a suicidal, obliterative, chronic, end-stage alcoholic. For a while, I was holding it down. I was keeping up appearances. I was able to not exactly flourish. But in sobriety now, looking back on it, it was such a waste. I thought I was doing great. I could have done so much better. Like, I could have been... The world was my oyster back then, and I was too fucking stupid and drunk to notice it. And now I'm turning 41 and really don't have much to show for it. And what I've come to learn, and there's a few things. One is that functioning alcoholism, if we're going to be stuck with that term, then it's not about the volume that you're drinking. That doesn't really matter. It's about your relationship with it. It can be a small amount or a big amount, but if it's something that you're coming to depend on, and if you notice that you are depending on it at the cost of things that are actually important in your life, then things are about to get a lot worse for you. Because for me, I didn't see it coming. I never thought that I would be The kind of alcoholic who would be lying in a hospital bed on a drip, out of my mind with delirium tremens and psychosis and delusions and detached from reality. But that comes fast after this stage, if you do nothing about it. Functioning alcoholism is not about the fact that, look, the active word in the phrase functioning alcoholism is not functioning, it's alcoholism. That's what matters. And any way you cut it, you could lose the word functioning, and the word alcoholic would be just as true to describe you. And what it led to for me eventually was just profound isolation and loneliness and depression. But I had sought that. I talked about this, I think, in a previous video, where the loneliness that I was experiencing, I both sought it out and resented it. I both wanted it and hated it. I had made myself lonely almost on purpose because it didn't sound like loneliness to me. I was pretending it was independence. It was not being accountable to anybody. It was forgetting all of my responsibilities and hiding from all the important stuff in my life, and instead pursuing a life that I was trying to convince myself was bohemian and hedonistic and pleasurable, but was in fact fucking miserable. I have positive memories from that time, for sure, but that's not the same as romanticizing that period. There are things that there is good that came from it. And I will never be angry at myself for that walk home that I told you about. That sense of those warm evenings with the cicadas kind of chirping in the trees, and the locals all really kind of busy and always seeming happy and really sociable and really friendly and just fun to be around. And feeling like an outsider. But the truth is, all of that would have been better without the alcohol. And I can't remember that period of my life, as good as some of it was, as life-changingly good as some of it was. I can't remember it without looking through this murk, this filth, this layer, this window of terrible alcoholism that came as a result of that period, because I didn't do anything about it. All right, I think that's enough for today. Like I said, sometimes if I can't sleep, I will just roll the camera and say things, and then hopefully salvage it when I'm editing. So if you see this video, it's because I've decided there was some stuff in it worth saving. But you'll be the judge of that. And as I said, if you think this content is okay, then like and subscribe so that YouTube also knows that it's kind of okay. And if you really like it, then head over to the Patreon. The link is in the description. Hopefully see you there. Thank you for watching. And as always, good luck out there.